Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Today, our guest is Monica, the founder of Impact Family Wellness, a direct primary care clinic in Texas where patients get unlimited primary care for a flat monthly fee. No insurance, no red tape, just real relationships with their healthcare team. She is also the creator of the DPC Formula, where she teaches other healthcare providers how to launch their own practices through her book, online courses, and consulting. After experiencing burnout in the traditional system, Monica set out to build a model of care that truly prioritizes patients and gives providers the freedom to practice medicine the way it was meant to be. Well, welcome, Monica. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Amazing. I am so excited to talk about the behind the dream of how your businesses came to be, get some insight on your business and that journey, and then talk a little bit about some coaching. We basically do a little bit of brainstorming in this session, which I find that a lot of entrepreneurs love to get an idea of what's going on behind the scenes so that they don't feel alone in this journey. A lot of the times that can be the case where you're like, I am all of a sudden a CEO of my company and I don't have anyone to kind of bounce off ideas. Are other people experiencing this? So let's dive into your business. You mentioned you started your business because of burnout in the traditional industry. So can you tell me a little bit about what inspired you or what the inspiration was behind starting both of these businesses?
Yeah. So I started Impact Family Wellness, which is my clinical office, about 6.5 years ago. And I had been a nurse practitioner in the insurance-based system for about 10 years at that point. And what I found is that I wasn't doing what I loved, which was taking care of patients and building relationships with them. I was treating them like cattle, giving them a Band-Aid for their healthcare concern, and spending 70% of my day in trying to convince an insurance company that I did my job. And it was awful. I was doing paperwork all day long. I was like head down in a computer. And occasionally I would look up and talk to my patient. And it was awful. And so I was actually relocating to Texas and trying to figure out what I wanted to do in my life. Because I'd done a lot of different things. I worked for an orthopedic surgeon. I'd done family practice, urgent care, all sorts of things. It was actually a Facebook ad that said, primary care physician takes home $400,000 a year and is home in time for dinner. Well, that was clearly a lie. So that clickbait worked like a charm on me. And so I clicked on it and it was all about this model of direct primary care. Spoiler alert, I don't make $400,000 a year, but I am home in time for dinner. And so I had no intent of ever being an entrepreneur. In fact, I didn't even know what that word meant, to be honest. And it was never in my radar, but I was like, wait a second, this actually lets me do what I want. I can take care of less patients, take better care of them, have more control of my time, and make the same amount of money. By the way, I've never made $400,000 a year, just to be very clear. And so I took that to my husband, who has an MBA, and he was like, Mon, that's crazy. Like, you can't have all four of those. And I was like, well, I think maybe I can. And so I did a ton of research, wrote a business plan, had to ask Google how, because ChatGPT wasn't a thing then. And really was just looking to give myself a job. I wasn't looking to build a business. I was just looking to give myself a job where I could do what I loved. And so I did. And then fast forward 6 years where I am now, and I have now opened 3 clinics. I have 7 nurse practitioners that work for me, and I actually don't see patients anymore because I've stepped out of that into just the CEO role. So yeah, that's how that was founded. My book in consulting actually came because I was burning myself out as a CEO because I was chasing what I thought other people thought was the definition of success. So if I have 3 clinics, why don't I have 7 clinics, right? I need more and more and more and more clinics. And I actually was on a reality TV show that was a business competition that I actually won. It's called The Blocks, season 18. If you go to my YouTube, Impact Family Wellness YouTube, you can see a like blurb on it. It's like 35 minutes, kind of gives you the overview. But after that, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do all the things because now I'm like a validated business owner, right? And so I legit got sick because I was just trying to chase this idea of what success was. And so a lot of therapy, a lot of tears, and a lot of journaling later, I realized that opening 7 clinics is not my idea of success at all. In fact, I just want to change the world by making direct primary care more accessible to everybody. And so that is when I decided to write a book and then an online course to help other healthcare providers get out of that burnout and get to the place where I am, where I get to live my best life.
Amazing.
So yeah. And here I am.
I love that. And there's a few things that you mentioned that I want to touch on. And that's like, you didn't even know what an entrepreneur was, because I felt the same way when I started my business. I literally just knew that I wanted to help people, but had no idea what I was going to do. And I was like, I don't even know what an entrepreneur is. I don't even know how you can have the discipline to like run a business. So that in itself was like a unique thing. I also love that you're like, I had this idea and my husband was like, I don't think that's possible. And you're like, you know what? This is what I say to clients all the time. I'm like, the delusional will always outwin the should, could, whatever. If you're delusional about what you want, you're going to make it happen because you're willing to like run through a brick wall, catch on fire. You're willing to do it all, right? Just to make it happen. And that's what you did. And then the other thing you talked about, which I think is really important for listeners, is success. It's a lot of the time we don't set up what that is for us. And then we get caught up in what you said, like we're chasing other people's version of success. And it just isn't for us. You know, like there's a reason you started this business and it's not necessarily the same for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, revenue, I'm here to tell you, if your idea of success is based on a number, you're probably chasing something else, right? My idea of success is that I can live on my time, right? I don't want to work 80 hours a week. I love those people you meet. They're like, oh yeah, I work 80 hours a week. I'm like, okay, I think you're crazy. Like, that's not impressive to me. I'm like, then you need to be a better manager or a better delegator. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. And sometimes I get it. You just have to put in the work. So if you're out there working 8 hours a week and you're like, that lady needs to stick it, I get it. There's a time and a place where you may have to be doing that. But if that's what you're priding yourself on, I'm sorry. Nope. That's not a good life. Yeah. Right? Like, as a healthcare provider, I'm going to tell you, not great.
100%. We wear busy almost like a badge when we first start our businesses too. But like you said, there's a time and place. I always say there's a season. There's a season in your business for different ways of running it. But I totally agree with you. It's like, if you just want to make a crap ton of money, then maybe you should stay in a career and like work your way up that ladder, because then you don't have to wear all the hats as a business owner. You know, like you're doing this for a different reason. And I think that brings me to my next question for you is, when you first launched it, what was the problem you were most passionate about solving for people?
Yeah. And that is absolutely just finding healthcare that isn't hard. Our healthcare system in this country is so broken. You can't get an appointment. You can't get somebody to respond to you. You can't get somebody to tell you how much something is going to cost, let alone get somebody to listen and actually fix your issues. And that's a serious, serious problem, especially when we're talking about your health. It's the one thing that is the most important, because I don't care how much money you have. If you're sick, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can't spend it. You can't do anything with it. And so I really, and honestly, selfishly, a lot of the reason I opened it is because I wanted to do what I loved. And that was taking care of people the way they should, without an insurance company telling me, oh no, you can't check that lab because we're not going to approve it. Or no, you can't do a patient's pap smear and their physical in the same day because we're not going to give you as much reimbursement. Or the fact that you come in for your physical, but you have a runny nose and you want to talk about it, but oh, you can't do that because now it's no longer a preventative visit. Now it is you have to go pay your copay, and then you're going to have to come back to get your physical done. It's so dumb. Yeah. When we can do all of these things at one time. We need to do convenience, right? So in every other world, it's all about convenience, right? You choose your car because it's the most convenient. You choose that gas station because it's the most convenient. You choose your dentist because he's convenient and he cares. But in healthcare, there's nothing convenient about it. And you can't actually get people to talk to you. And God forbid you can like actually do something without coming in for an appointment. And there's so many ways. But ultimately, I just wanted to provide people with the care that I was taught how to do, and how I knew in my heart was what was best for them, and not what was best for an insurance company. Yeah.
And I think you're touching on something that's so important. It's like, it's almost like the common sense was taken out of the healthcare and like the way that you're explaining it. And it's like you're putting it back in. It's like common sense says, if you're coming to me for a
Right.
problem, like I need to look at your whole body, and like we should be able to have a conversation about more than just the one thing you wrote down you wanted to come in for, you know, like that's just common sense. So the fact that you're going in and really changing that, and that's really what inspired you to start this, I think that in itself is like, yeah, let's break the mold. The industry's not doing it right. We need to change that. And I love that you're so dedicated in doing that. That's so amazing. What would you say is the most common problem your clients face, and how do you help them solve it?
Ooh, there's so many different ways to approach that, right? From a medical standpoint, we see a ton of perimenopausal women right now. That is like one of the biggest things we see, as well as patients looking for weight loss medications. Which I don't know what side of the boat you're on, but as a healthcare provider who's been doing this for 17 years, those weight loss meds are the best, safest, most amazing thing I've ever seen in healthcare in 17 years. That's for a whole nother podcast, but that's my take on it. So those of you who don't agree, you can stop listening right now. It's fine. I'm good with it. But anyway, those are the two most common like healthcare issues that we see at this point. But in general, our patients come to us because no one else will listen to them. The number of times they go to see their gynecologist or they go to their doctor and they say, I have this problem, this problem, this problem. And they say, okay, let's check some labs. And they check their labs like, oh, everything's fine. You're fine. No, you're not fine. Like if you can't sleep or you feel awful, you can't just accept like, oh yeah, well, this paperwork here, it says you're fine, which means you're fine. We're done talking. Right. And it's so frustrating, right? If somebody said that about your car, what would you do? You would take it to somebody else, right? If you're like, hey, I've got this ticking sound. They're like, oh, it's fine. Yeah, no, it's clearly not fine. Like it's ticking for a reason. You would go find another mechanic, right? Unfortunately, in healthcare, we're like stuck with whoever they want to give us. And so, yeah, that's a big reason most patients come to our office is they just want somebody to listen to them.
Yeah. And I would also say too, I find a lot of times it's like, this information that the healthcare providers are giving you, I'm like, what is it based on? Like, what study? Were there any women included in it? And I feel like
Probably not.
Yeah, I'm like, I feel like there's not that much research on women's health, and yet we are being fed all these things that technically don't apply to us because a lot of it is done on men. And we're like, well, we have different hormones. We have different
most lab normals are based off of 39-year-old white men.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. Because guess what? I am white, but I'm not 39 and I'm not a female or I'm not a man. So they probably are not my normal. And so it's, and this is why healthcare is a practice, right? Is because if everything was just a paper, like, oh, these labs tell me this, so then we wouldn't have people who need to critically think to make those decisions. But unfortunately, so much of healthcare has become this like cookie cutter. Everybody's on an algorithm. You say yes or no, because that's what you get when you call a telehealth provider. They're really just following an algorithm. They can't actually think outside the box. And it's really frustrating because you need somebody to think outside the box. Like it might look like strep, it might sound like strep, but it might be something completely different.
Right.
And you have to ask the right questions to do that. And that's why you go to school forever to do this job and to get the license in order to do it. But we're just trying to simplify it so much that it's a struggle. And that's because these providers have to see 30 patients in 8 hours and they just don't have time to ask the right questions. And I did it for 10 years and I did it well. I was really good. I was pretty efficient at it, but it was absolutely exhausting and not what I love to do. And it was draining me hardcore. So
yeah, you were missing that connection that drove you to even get into this field to begin with, right? It's being able to help people. Yeah. So would you say that that's a misconception people often have about your industry and the services you provide? And how would you say you're like addressing it differently?
Yeah, I will say just in the last few years, I think people are starting to understand that our healthcare system is broken and that they actually do have a choice. And that's really the message that I need to tell the world is that there is an alternative to crappy healthcare. You don't have to use medical insurance for everything. Yes, it's got its time and place, but health insurance was meant to be like your car insurance. it only kicks in when bad things happen, right? Your car insurance doesn't pay for your oil changes and your tires and your gas. It's there for when somebody smashes into you and you need it replaced or you need it to be surgically fixed, right? Let's just call it that. Your health insurance was meant to do the same thing. It's there for the more catastrophic things. And that's why it doesn't cover all the day-to-day stuff, right? If you have a high deductible plan, it's probably $5,000 to $7,000. And you're going to have to pay that amount of money out of pocket before they're going to cover anything. Well, unfortunately, what happens then is people don't seek the care they need, right? You do the same thing with your car. You're like, well, it's ticking, but how much is it going to cost me? And so you just wait and wait and wait until it's really, really sick. And then it's like some sort of crazy thing. And so our healthcare system is not a healthcare system at all. It is a sick care system. We wait for people to get sick and then we try to fix them. But what if we flipped the script? What if we kept people healthy? Yeah. What if we talked about things like sleep and stress and nutrition and body movement? Because I'm here to tell you, if your primary care provider has not said those 4 words to you, you need to find a new one because those are the core parts to healthcare. And so I think people just struggle because everyone is so used to health insurance and thinking that health insurance is going to take care of you. Guess what? They don't give 2 craps about you. I hate to break it to you, but they don't. They just care about their profits, right?
Yeah. Mic drop.
Yeah. I mean, it's a business, turns out. And the less things they cover for you and the more money they take from you, the more money they keep in their pocket. And so it behooves them to not cover things because then you won't go get them done, right? And so don't get me wrong, health insurance has its time and a place, right? But I think it's completely over expected to be used and helpful. And then they just get to dictate what is covered and what is not. And then you're at their mercy, right? If you walked into a car dealership and you said, you know what, I want the brand new 2025 Lexus silver SUV. And like, yeah, that's cool. But your insurance says you can only have the 3-wheeled Hyundai red one with the rust on it in the back. You would absolutely walk out. Yeah. Right. But for some reason, we think in healthcare, when you're like, ooh, I want to see that doctor. And they're like, yeah, no, you can't see that guy. He's not in network with us. You got to go to that guy over there. The one who, has had 15 malpractice suits against. Like, we would never let somebody say that with our car, yet we're okay with that in healthcare, where when you take it back to the free market, which is what we are, right? Nobody walks into my office because their insurance company told them to. They walk into my office because they know we're going to take care of them. Somebody told them how great we were. When you take healthcare back to the free market, people have to fight for your business, which means they're actually going to treat you like a human. Shocking.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned something very important. It's like your health should actually be proactive and you shouldn't have to wait until you're sick, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that is probably a really big misconception in the healthcare system, that it's like you go and seek help when you are sick. Like you said, it's like the sick system, but it's no, like what you're offering and how you're changing things. And this misconception is by being proactive. And I think that is huge. And the more that we do that, then the less, going into the healthcare place for being sick, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing all that. I want to kind of dive in a little bit into your entrepreneurial journey and talk a little bit about what it was like to start a business. So when you look back on it, what would you say was your biggest challenge that you faced probably in the earlier days of coming up with this sort of industry, like business that wasn't really existing in the industry the way that you're doing it? And how did you work through that?
Yeah, I think it's a struggle most entrepreneurs run into is an education barrier, right? So especially in what I do, first of all, no one knows what the words direct primary care mean. Nobody's Googling that. So just throwing out a Google ad does not help me. Yeah. I have to not only explain the service that I have, but also how it benefits others. And so I really struggled with finding the right words to get it across, because as a healthcare provider, I 100% understand why this works, right? Because I understand billing and coding and all of the back end of healthcare, but patients don't understand that. And so when I wrote my first website, all the copy for it, it was written from my point of view. Yeah. Like, let me tell you why this is good from a healthcare provider. But that's not what people need to read. They need to read what's good for them, right? Why would my customers come to me? It's not because I don't do ICD-10 codes. I'm going to tell you that's not why people show up. They show up because we make them feel like a human. They show up because we get rid of mom guilt, because they can bring their kid in as many times as they want. There's no extra cost. And guess what? Johnny feels better and he gets his little dum-dum on his way out, right? You have to make sure that you are writing your story for people, because that's what they're going to be attracted to. And I had no idea how to do that. I have 3 degrees in nursing, not one in business, accounting, marketing, or even how to clean the toilet, but I did it all. I wore every single hat, just like almost every entrepreneur does. Yeah. And I'm happy I don't wear all those hats anymore, but learning how to wear those hats, and especially knowing when to ask for help, because there's certain hats you just shouldn't wear, like CPA. Mm-hmm. Do not try to wear a CPA hat. I'm going to say you don't want to get in trouble with Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
And so I think that was really hard for me, was to really figure out the marketing stuff and then dive into what I could handle myself and what I can't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that I always say to clients is like, you are a genius in your space, and you need to be okay hiring other geniuses in their space. Absolutely. Because you're not supposed to be doing it all. But again, you know, a season in business. So it does, everyone does do it as an entrepreneur. But then there's also the benefit of at least knowing how to do all the things, or having a look behind the curtain that allows you to then hire the right people, or to know, you know, like what they're talking about. Kind of like what you mentioned, you know, one thing that you were struggling with or found as a challenge was, you know, you needed to educate people. And the way that you were doing that was at a level of having the education that you have versus like, you know, the conversational talks, which is probably more what they were attracted to, which is completely understandable. And then the other thing that I want to touch on that you mentioned is the you behind the business. It's like telling your story you didn't realize was going to be such a big sell. And it is true, because the difference between you and someone else running the exact same thing is you. Like,
absolutely.
The business structure could be exactly the same, but the difference is the person behind it. And when you build that trust with people and they're like, no, she gets it. Like, I feel comfortable with her and I haven't even met her or had a conversation with her. It changes everything in your business because people feel more comfortable coming to you.
Absolutely. People do business with people they know, like, and trust. And if you can't build that, you're going to struggle.
Yeah. What would you say, you know, like if you had the chance to kind of start all over again, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently? Is there anything you would do differently?
Yeah, lots of things. I definitely would have, I would have asked for more help on the marketing side earlier. I was bootstrapping it. I was trying to do as much as I could, as cheap as I could. But marketing is another level, especially, I mean, I opened in 2019 when social media was, you know, it was out there, but it's so much more difficult right now. Like, the algorithms are constantly changing, right? Like, now we have TikTok and we have there's so many other social platforms out there, and understanding SEO and AI and all the things. There's so much to building organic traffic that it is mind-blowing to me. But yeah, I think I would have likely asked for, especially if I was opening now in 2025, I would have needed a marketing person from day one. Like, it would have been worth the investment to put money into that. But you also have to find the right people, which can also be a struggle. So, yeah, I also think I would have hired help faster. Especially a virtual assistant. So I have 2 virtual assistants now. They both are in the Philippines, and they are 2 of the most hardworking, amazing humans I've ever met. And I pay them pennies. Don't tell them that, but I pay them pennies, and they know it. Like, if you compare their salaries to an American worker, and they're phenomenal. Shout out to Kent. He's like my favorite human on the planet. He's always there for me, constantly doing things that I don't even know he does. And so, yeah, if you are drowning by any means, start delegating and find someone that can do it for you. It needs to be delegated, automated, or eliminated. Figure it out.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I will say that I agree with you. Like, you know, my background is in marketing, did that for almost 15 years. And the game now is a little bit different. And one thing that I say to clients is because it can't get very overwhelming. It's just choose one platform. You know, yes, you can be everywhere, but you need to get really good at one and comfortable on one before you can actually navigate to other places in a way that's actually going to provide some sort of result. Like you can go and like post the same stuff on TikTok as you do Instagram and blah, 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 blah. But each platform has its own strategy, its own algorithm. So you need to get really good at one before you can actually explore the rest, because then you can actually, like you said, delegate. And I like that you mentioned hiring faster would have been something that you would have done, because a lot of the time people are concerned about it. And it's like, well, obviously that financial factor comes into play, but you don't have the bandwidth to actually bring on more clients to do these other things because you're doing it all. So, but when you actually decide to hire someone, it opens up not only your calendar, but your mental space to be able to do things differently and at another level and grow your business.
Yeah. Especially if you're drowning in things that are way below your pay grade or aren't in your strengths, right? So like I can do graphic design, but I'm terrible at it. So why would I waste my time creating terrible graphics when I'm just not good at it, right? Where I can hire somebody who is good at it. It takes them 10 minutes where it would have taken me 3 hours to create nothing even remote. I don't have that skill set, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a great book called Who Not How, and that was really helpful to me. It just walks you through, like, you don't have to be an expert at all the things, right?
Yeah. I'm going to look up that book. I haven't heard of it.
Yeah. It was very helpful to me.
Yeah. That sounds, yeah. I like that. I like that conversation. Who, not how, even that title. I'm like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
With that said, I'm talking about delegation. I want to dive into some of the questions that you had that we want to brainstorm on the call and kind of like pull the curtains behind what goes on, you know, in not just like consulting, but also just business. So one of the things that you talked about was delegation. You wanted to continue to hand off responsibilities effectively so you can stay focused on big picture strategy while your team thrives in their roles. So can you tell me a little bit more about this and like what it is that's kind of got you stuck here that we can work through?
Yeah. So I have 3 administrative staff. One is a virtual assistant that works full time for me. And then I have 2 like in person. So one is a operations manager and one is a practice administrator. And they do all the admin stuff for me. But where I run into struggles is there are just times where I feel like the decisions that need to be made, whether it's from a marketing standpoint, from a decision making, that it has to have my education level involved. So especially one thing I wish that I could delegate, and that if I could do this, it would make my life so much easier, is I do a lot of meetings with business owners trying to convince them to offer our benefits for their employees, right? So it's an alternative to insurance or an add-on. However, and I have a community liaison that works. She goes out and does meetings, goes to chamber meetings, all the things, like meets new people. But as far as like actually closing those deals, I'm the one that has to do it. And it's because they always are asking, they have like specific medical questions that I, as a healthcare provider, know the answer to, but my community liaison does not, because she's a marketing girl, right? And I can't expect her to. Like, I have 17 years of experience. I can't put that into a magic ball and just give it to her, right? And so that is a place where I really struggle to delegate, is because I am the closer, and that makes a bottleneck, and that is not great. Now, thankfully, it's, you know, a couple of meetings a week, but it's definitely a place where I wish there was some way that I felt comfortable delegating specifically that.
Okay, that's a very unique problem to have. So I'm glad that you're bringing this up. So would you say that this person, you said that her background is in marketing, is she the one getting the leads and starting that conversation? Okay. So
typically so, yes.
Okay, so I would say there's almost like, there's a few things you can do here. One is you're talking about closing the deals. So it could be that when she is having these conversations, you almost need to either hire another person that's the you that does that, if you don't want to be stuck in there. So it's like she brings this person on when they're ready to talk, to go over the proposal, to go over what's been suggested, to answer those questions. So that would be one suggestion. The other one is you probably get a lot of common questions, which you could address in an FAQ, PDF, or however it is that you're sending this to the prospects, where a lot of those questions are already kind of answered, and even she can reference, and she can, a lot of the times you want to be very transparent and be like, like, my background is not in this. I am just the salesperson here. However, our founder, Monica, has provided these FAQs, and, a lot of the questions that you're asking are in here. So then that way it kind of takes you out of the equation to an extent. Still gives your marketing person the power to be able to have these conversations. And in no way are you not being transparent in what it is that you're doing.
And we do have a bunch of video FAQs. We have a specific website for employers, and I've created several videos. So it used to be that I would just make them have an initial conversation with me. But now if anybody, and especially we have we do some cold leads as well, where people are like, I want to know more. So instead of just setting up a time to talk to them, I will send them 2 short informational videos, be like, watch this. If this still sounds interesting to you, then you can schedule a time on my calendar. So that has been very helpful. I think my biggest, I know my biggest issue with this is trusting someone else to be as good as I am at making the sale. And that I've come a long way. I will tell you, I've come a long way in trusting and delegating. But that's just one thing that I'm like, they just can't do it. They just can't do it as well as I can. And to be honest, I probably could delegate it. I just need to get over it. So I need to get over myself.
So you need to kind of change the conversation you're having with yourself, that this person can't do it, because they probably could, but you're already creating that almost energetic block that even if you gave them the chance, they probably wouldn't succeed. Right. Yeah. So one thing that I would suggest for this is start bringing, when she kind of passes it off to you, is she involved at all?
Typically, no.
Okay, so I would start getting her involved. So she starts seeing what the conversations are like, how you respond, the word choices you use. That would be really good for her. And then the more comfortable you get with having her in the meetings, probably by the 5th one, maybe number 6, you go, hey, you take the lead. And if there's anything you don't know how to answer, you can say, Monica, can you address this? Right? But then you're there as a safety net, and then you can really see if she can actually take this on.
Yeah.
But it creates a safety net. It's a very good safety net because you're there, right? So you're not going to lose the lead by any means because you're there. So you're really coaching them. The other thing I will say, I like that you're sending the videos, but sometimes having things written is better to an extent, because people will do command search if they're getting this through an email to search a specific question instead of maybe wanting to watch an entire video.
Sure. Yeah.
So even if you can transcribe those in a way, and then just kind of make it a little bit of an FAQ, just because sometimes people will be like, this is great, but I really just have one question, and I'd rather just know that answer instead of watching a whole video. So it also gives you another level as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, you need to switch that mindset of yes, she can do it, or whoever this person is can do it. And then bringing them with you to these conversations, so they really get a look behind the scenes as to how you're communicating, what you're saying, what kind of questions people are asking. And it's going to make them more confident once you're ready to pass that on to them fully.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know that we're going to be able to get through all 3. So you did have 2 other questions. Is there one that you're more inclined to? One of them was about managing emotions and expectations in practice. And the other one was determining appropriate incentives for employees. Is there one of these 2 that you want to talk more than the other?
Well, I feel like the emotions ones we could talk about forever, because it's employees and customers and all the people. So we could talk about that forever. I will say, I think the easier one to answer is determining giving bonuses versus giving more time off versus a vacation day. It's sometimes hard to tell. I always want to make sure my employees know how much I appreciate them. And so I do lots of words of affirmation, writing them lots of little letters and notes, and always telling them how much I appreciate them. But like we did a Christmas in July, right? Because I think it's fun. And so they all got the choice of either going to a spa for the day, like taking the day, and they were going in groups, or they could have a $500 bonus, right? And so it sounds great and it's all fun, until you find out that maybe neither one was really what people wanted, right? And so I would love to know if there's a magic wand for how to determine how to incentivize, how to excite, how to prove employees that you love them, but kind of in their language, right? Like everybody has their love language. I feel like everybody has their pay language, right? Because money isn't everything to everybody. And some don't want to go to the spa for the day. And then others are just like, can I just get an extra day off? And it's like, okay, so how do I, pinpointing that, right? Because I have 10 employees. And so, it's hard.
Okay. So I like what you're saying. And I feel like there's almost like two ways that you can incentivize people. So first of all, because the way that you're running your business, it's very like, let's have conversations and make you the focus. I feel like you also run your business that way when it comes to your team. So with that said, you're probably doing check-ins with them on one of those. Beautiful. So on the upcoming check-in, I would actually ask them and just be like, listen, if I wanted to give you a bonus, what would actually make the biggest impact, or what would you want the most? Because you're right. Some people would rather have more vacation days. Some people would rather get a bonus money, related, or they'd be like, I wouldn't mind if you like send me a gift or send me like a gift card to go grocery shopping. Everyone's life is a little bit different. So you can kind of have pre-planned some suggestions that are all around the same like price range, obviously. So, if you're getting an extra vacation day, what would that equal money-wise if you were to choose the bonus, so that it is compensation-wise, everyone's getting somewhat the same if they're all within the same roles and level of responsibility. But in addition to that, what you're talking about when it's like the spa, that's almost like a team activity, especially if they're going in pairs and things like that, which I think falls outside of the incentive part of like getting a bonus or getting an additional time off. So you're almost doing two different things in your business, but you've grouped them together. And I think that's where it's getting a little bit like, I don't know, like it's getting a little clouded. So I would almost separate them and be like, okay, these are some incentives that are specific to these people because people are incentivized differently. And then on top of that, every quarter or however often you're doing them, we do like a business bonus, right? Which that business bonus could be you get to go to the spa, or you choose this thing, or like you choose like a gift card to the grocery store, but same price point. Or it's just you get to go to the spa and like that's the only thing you choose, that's the only thing you get, because you're kind of have your options over here of like ongoing incentive when like we want to do certain things, or like you want to be like, hey, you've been working really hard and I want to give you an additional day off this week because you mentioned that that's how you want to be incentivized, right? Or whatever that bonus looks like. So you almost have like two things. You have individually and then you have like company-wide.
Sure. Makes sense.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think it definitely, I can see, I never thought about the spa day being like clouded as a team activity, right? But it absolutely was, right? Like they went in fours. So, no, it definitely makes sense. So yeah. And I have one-to-one meetings with my staff every month. And it's not me telling them what's wrong with them. It's their opportunity to tell me, but I could definitely ask those questions directly.
Yeah, definitely give them some ideas for the one that's like specifically to each person, what they want as an incentive, because sometimes they'll be like, I don't know. But you're like, okay, well, you know what? I've noticed that you book a lot of vacations. So I think it might make sense for you to opt up for this one or the money one, like whatever that is. Sometimes you kind of need to help guide them, because a lot of, like you said, like a lot of industries aren't built the way that you're building it, in like including them in conversations like this, right? So sometimes you need to kind of hold their hand and help them a little bit. But yeah, think about it, separate it that way. It's almost like you have like team incentives, like company incentives, and then you have individual incentives, right? So then it's like they're tapping into both, And on the team ones, it's running a little bit different because you're doing it as a team. You get to go out there as a business and do your whole thing together. And, you know, it's a little bit different than just individual incentives.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I hope that was helpful. Well, thank you so much for coming on today on the dream and showing us a little bit about not just your business, but how you became an entrepreneur, and then sharing these questions with us so that we can get a look behind what it's like, you know, like the questions that come up for business owners. A lot of the times people are like, am I alone in these questions? And the more you grow within your business, the different the questions become. So thank you so much for being here. It has been a pleasure.